Who is the best hunter in country music?
I think I could outhunt any one of them. Blake would lie and say that he's a great hunter, but he's not a good shot, and it's hard to hunt when you got a beer in your hand.
Always in Rob, or do you have to do anything?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm more into what they call the Iron Dog. It's the snow machine version of the Iditarod,
Mhm.
where they ride the snowmobiles. Pretty
Okay,
much
cool.
the same trek.
Now, what came first, the touring company or the show? Was American Plumbing Stories? Is that made in Alaska as well?
We did an episode of a plumber up here. Yeah, we sure
Okay.
did.
Oh, so that's all over the country. That's not just strictly Alaska.
Oh no, no, it's we in fact we visited other countries. We've done a story on an Australian, excuse me, Australian plumber. Um, gosh, I don't remember where else we went, but yeah, we've been all over.
Oh, wow, so I totally read that wrong. So strike one, Jeff. But if you want to see my country cred go down even worse now, and this is no lie, I was about 2 hours ago. I did not know until 2 hours ago that American Harvester was the name of a tractor.
Oh, International Harvester, yeah.
I took the name at its most literal sense. I then I started reading. I started reading the lyrics. I'm like, oh, I made a mistake here.
No, I think that's why that song did so well because even though we were talking about a particular brand, like if I said John Deere, you would know what I was talking about.
Right.
But Case IH is another big brand. It's the red brand. There's green and red. But I think the reason that song did so well was because we were referencing a harvester, and all brands, no matter what the color, make a harvester.
Here, I thought you were just planting tomatoes internationally or around the globe.
No.
I swear to God. So this is what 25 years in New York will do to you. You know,
Oh, good Lord, yeah.
I saw your
By the
last
way,
EP when you're teaming up with Laney, Jelly Roll. At age 60, do you feel your age when when you work with them, or
do I feel my age?
do you
What?
feel your age at all when you're working with like younger artists at this point, or are you still
No,
with
shoot,
everybody?
no. Ain't none of them can keep up with me.
How does that work out? How's
Well, I mean, I have a high energy. People joke about it in our industry, especially, but in general, people kind of pick at me about my energy. Um, I just attribute it to a lot of my health habits. I'll be honest. But working with them, I mean, look at Jelly. I'd like to think that I've influenced him in a positive way to take charge of his health, and I'm proud of that guy, man. He's made miraculous changes in his lifestyle that's helping him, and I think is going to extend his life for sure. Laney, she's a ball of energy as well, and a lot of fun. So, yeah, no, I didn't feel. I mean, in our business, doing what we do, especially as writers, Laney and I have written together. Um, you don't. There's not a comparison of of each other as much as it is a bouncing off and working with each other. If that makes any sense,
yeah, no,
it's
absolutely.
not a competition.
No. But has Jelly Roll hit you up for any advice on us staying in shape or what you do?
Oh, initially, yeah, yeah. He asked me, what I did, because he was joking about my energy, and I said, man, there's like three huge things for me. Number one is fasting. I've learned that fasting has helped me and my energy as much or more than anything. Two, I eat one meal a day. I think it's imperative that we not intake more than we necessarily need. And I'm a high protein, low carb guy, and I've been that way for about 7 or 8 years now. I've been practicing that, maybe even more. And I told him that's what I do. I exercise a lot, and it's critical. My big thing with him is I told him a body in motion stays in motion, a body at rest stays at rest.
Mhm.
So go walk, go do whatever you got to do, but take care of yourself.
Well, what is your one meal a day?
It depends. I generally,
Are
excuse
you,
me.
are you strict with it, or is it something you can just eat
I'll be
whatever?
honest. It depends on circumstances, environment. I'm not the guy who's a complete ass about it. If I'm somewhere and someone off, my one meal is a dinner out. I'm not gonna not eat something that they've prepared. You know what I mean? But at the same time, if I have control, like when we're out here, I try to stick to the high protein, high fat, low carb as much as I can. But some nights, after a long day of burning, you know, 4,000 calories, I might come in and have spaghetti. If it's what my wife has made, that's what I'll eat. I am strict, but not so much so that I won't indulge in something every now and then. And I say I try to keep everything under about 50 carbs a day. But there's some days when I might not have any carbs. And then there's days when I may have, 100. At night when I have my wine, I have a couple glasses of wine, and sometimes I might have a cup and a half of M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. I'll splurge now and then.
There's no guilt at all. No.
Oh, not at all. But I won't do that if I've not had an extremely active day. If I know that I've burnt up so much that it's not going to impact me terribly, then I'll do it. Days when I'm out touring and I maybe I don't have as much activity, I try to avoid those kind of things.
Now define active for you. I saw some of your background a little bit in the military as far as, was it paratrooping? Was it, I forgot what the official name of that was.
Yeah.
Scaling walls, scaling buildings, and everything. And let's see, I'm thinking off the top of my head. Besides that, there was also work with the CIA, also working in Thailand with sex traffickers. What is a day-to-day activity like for you now that you're burning 4,000 calories?
Well, in Alaska, this time of year, it's really easy. All you got to do is go outside for a few hours, with negative temperatures when it's, -3 degrees outside. Your body burns a lot more calories in an attempt to stay warm and regulate your body's temperature. And on top of that, I'm doing a lot of activities, whether it's snowshoeing, um, snow machining, riding a snowmobile. Believe it or not, that it can take a lot of energy, especially if you get out in a place and get stuck and you're having to shovel yourself out. Um, yeah, the big thing is just getting that heart rate up out of a resting heart rate area for me, and I do that by staying active outdoors, especially up here. Like I said, we have a business up here, so the last few weeks we've been building a cabin. And again, negative temperatures, it's snowing, and you're just out there working, lifting logs and doing stuff. People ask me if I go to the gym. I'm like, or do you work out? I'm like, I work outdoors. That is my workout. And they think, oh, you're not really working out. And I've had guys that hit the gym every day that come out here, and 45 minutes into our day, they're like, hey man, I got to go sit down. you know.
What's the hardest part? What's the deciding factor that gets them out? What's
I think it's the cold. I think they don't understand that they have the ability to mentally manipulate themselves. That's the big problem with a lot of people. We're not willing in our society today. We're not willing to accept pain. And I think if you teach yourself and you learn that if you're willing to accept a certain level of pain, the reward on the other side is so much greater. And you push yourself to learn that you can tolerate a whole lot more than you initially might think you could.
now, did you have to gradually work your way to this, or were you naturally able to do it from your military background?
I think the military no, most definitely played a great part in that. As a young kid, my parents taught me, to work hard and all the good moral ethics. But no question, the military teaches you to push yourself beyond your limits, and that's just a fact. And when you're in an environment where things are so stressful and so physically demanding, sometimes you have no choice but to do that, or you can just quit. And in that case, you don't belong in that profession. It's just that simple. And I apply that same philosophy to everything that I do in my physical life. Just don't stop.
Ever come close to breaking?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've come close to breaking a few times, especially out here. Um, when you're out and it's, I've been out here when it's -20 degrees and you get out and your machine breaks down or you get stuck and you spend an hour and a half trying to get yourself unstuck, and you're at a point to where you feel like you're just absolute done. You're toast. But those are, for me, are the greatest moments when you say, I'm ready to stop. And when I get back to the house, I'm handing this up. I'm not ever doing that again. But then you push yourself and you get back to the house and you have a glass of wine and you go, I can't freaking wait to do that again tomorrow.
How often does that happen? Is that a day? Is that more often than not, or is
No,
it like a
probably
fun part
not.
of the routine?
It's kind of part of the routine out here. I mean, I have a 74 or 78-year-old neighbor who lives out here full time, off grid. And the guy hops on a snow machine at 74, 78 years old, and he'll ride 5 or 6, 8, 10, 12, depends on his day, miles. In fact, today we're going to go break trail. That means we're going into an area where the trail has not been ridden yet since we've gotten all this snow. And we're going to go in and put the trail in. We may have to cut trees that have fallen, trim limbs. Uh, you're going to get stuck a few times, but that old guy will do it. And he'll do it as long as I do it. And when I see those guys doing it, and it just it motivates me. And like I said, you ask, is it more often than not? It kind of is. It's kind of a daily routine out here. You accept the fact that you are going to have difficulties. When you wake up and say, this day absolutely might suck, but I'm not going to let it beat me. And I'm not saying that I don't come in. I've come in and sore. I mean, shit, 5 days ago, I wrecked my snow machine into the overflow on the ice. Got ejected off of the machine and it threw me through the ice into the, frigid waters, 32-degree water. Um, I got up, got back on my machine, rode to the cabin, changed clothes, took a couple Advil and went back at it.
So how long have you been up in Alaska? How long is this a norm?
We've had our place here, this business. We have a business called Jerry Lake, Alaska, where we bring clients, 4 to 6 clients at a time, and educate them on being in the off-grid environment. Spend time with them, but we do it in a place where they can be comfortable as well. Um, we've had this going on. We've had this property for about 10 years. We've been running this business for about 3 or 4. My son has.
How did you come about that? How did you go from Nashville to, I guess, the 48 states up to Alaska to do this? What was the
Well,
inspiration?
I've been coming to Alaska off and on for probably 30 years, ever since my military. And I'm a guy that if you talk to anybody, I tend to do things that push me to see if I can find my limits. You know what I mean? And this is an environment that does that. This is also an environment that teaches you to teach yourself things. I can't just pick up a phone when I'm out there and call AAA and say, hey, my snow machine is broke down. Come pick me up. It don't work that way. In fact, most of the places up here, there's no cell service. If I didn't have this satellite right now, I wouldn't be able to talk to you here at the cabin. And if I walk away from the cabin, I can't talk to you. Yeah. So you rely on yourself, and you become very creative in how and what you do. You become very resourceful. And I think that's a key as you get older as well. A lot of people who get older, they don't challenge themselves mentally, much less physically. And when you challenge yourself mentally, I think it does things inside your brain. I know that there's psychologists, psychiatrists out there that would tell you this is a fact. They talk about the medical terms for these things, that it forces your brain to do things that in turn feeds your body, and requires your body's energy and your body's metabolism to operate differently than if your mind is not being creative.
What's the lure of just being off the grid?
Say again?
What's the lure for you? What was your lure just of being off the grid and now showcasing that for other people?
Self-reliance, knowing that I can take care of myself, my family, my friends. And I love educating people on that. I love, when people come here, they think, oh my gosh, man, what if I do this? I'm like, well, like, for example, I hit myself with a machete and cut my leg. I had to stitch my knee up. Yeah, you just know that that you're going to live no matter what. And you hear this same thing in the military. We heard it a lot, and still do, especially for those guys who experienced a traumatic event. Uh, they Their mental ability to not give up is what allowed them physically to maintain.
You know, there's a follow-up to this.
Go ahead.
How'd you slice yourself with a machete?
I was cutting some limbs, and I was being, that's another thing out here. Safety is the first and foremost. When we cut a tree down, I don't just go up and cut a tree down like I would at home, where I'm not worried about things. I'll spend a day ensuring that I've gone through every possible scenario of how this tree could possibly fall, so that I don't get hurt. And I was doing that, and I was cutting away from myself, cutting a limb, and somehow the machete ricocheted off and came back and hit me on my knee.
Ooh. And how was a stitch? Did you know how to stitch yourself already? Was that something you already learned from military?
I did know, yeah. It wasn't pleasant though. I will tell you that. I had tears in my eyes.
Is that
It
true?
made my eyes water.
Like how many stitches did it take?
I only put 3. The doctor said it could have used more, but it would be okay.
That's pretty fun. So what do you do then when you go back when you go back to Nashville? You get bored?
um,
Like, by
I
having to
have a
go to
farm.
have to go to Whole Foods and get your meals, or is that
Well, honestly, I hunt and fish a lot. So the majority of our meat is meat that I've harvested. Um, we do buy extremely organic, clean foods when we do get foods. Um, so yeah, and when I go home, do I get bored? I can't. I don't have time to get bored between all of the occupations and things that I have going on. And like I said, we have a farm. We have some cattle. There's always something that needs to be done on a farm.
who is the best hunter in country music?
Uh, I
Who's
think
the
I could
best?
out hunt any one of them. Blake would lie and say that he's a great hunter, but he's not a good shot, and it's hard to hunt when you got a beer in your hand. Um, no, there's actually a few. Gary Lavac, he's a good hunter, but I don't think Gary. He would leave the stand if he got too cold.
So, so like, is your refrigerator, your freezer stocked already for summer, winter, for the next rest of the year?
Oh, no question. Yeah. I harvested 3 white-tailed deer this year, a buffalo. So we always have plenty of meat, and I end up sharing the meat with family members and stuff like that and friends.
Now, is this part of mostly of your one meal a day? Does it usually consist of deer meat?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Protein is a big part of what I ingest. Man, in fact, my wife gets on to me and says I need to eat more greens. I think green vegetables are extremely important as well. I haven't had a fruit, apple, a banana, a orange, anything like that in probably 6 years, 7 years. I haven't drank any milk in 6 or 7 years. I do use heavy whipping cream in my coffee. I have coffee.
Mhm.
I use heavy whipping cream, high in fat, low in carbs, no sugar. I try to minimize the sugar and any artificial ingredients as much as possible. Yeah, I'm
What's
sorry.
your, when it comes to grill, are you a griller, a grilling person, or do you, how do you usually prepare your meat?
Oh yeah, I do. I love to grill. I would prefer a steak over a fire as opposed to a steak cooked in an oven, broiled or anything like that. But I also like my wife does a steak when we're out here in iron skillets, and I like that because you get somewhat the same effect. And we're cooking over a gas stove, so you get a little bit of the fire heat. But there's nothing like a steak over a fire. That's my preference. But I will eat a steak any way that I can get a steak. Um, yeah, like I said, lots of protein. I'm not as strict on my carb count out here as I am when I'm in the lower 48 and I have so much more control. And again, a lot of that has to do with the amount of energy that I burn here. So I know that I'm still consuming less or retaining less than I normally would if I were in the lower 48.
Well, when you get back to the 48, are you a little antsy when you have to go into the recording studio and just write songs?
No, not at all. In fact, I look forward to that process. I think that's another thing for me. When I come up here, I don't really do a whole lot of that. So it's when I get back down there, it's time for me to do that. And for me, that's it's not just my profession. I absolutely love writing. It's what I got in the business to do, is to write songs. So I enjoy writing. Um, I'm because of my energy. When I get on the road, I tend to if I have writers out, I've been known to write with two or three. I'll do two sessions at the same time. So I have a writer in one room and a writer in another room, and I'll bounce back and forth and write two songs at the same time.
How are you inspired like by Alaska when you're up in the Alaska and the I guess alone or away from society? Are you become inspired for I guess songs or for lyrics, or is that
Oh,
just
absolutely, absolutely. But I would tell you, it's not just Alaska. I experience the same inspiration, no matter where I'm at in the world. If I'm in, you know, Dothan, Alabama, and I'm walking downtown, I see something. I think that's what songwriters do. They intake everything that they see visually, and they utilize that as inspiration for the stories that they have experienced or feel like or want to experience, and they put that into lyric and melody.
now when it comes to writing songs today? I mean, has your songwriting evolved from age 35 to age 60? I mean, have you matured more? Can you write the same songs today as you did back 30 years ago? Or do you have to think about it and say, you know what, I can't just keep writing about beer and 20, 30-year-old stuff. I have to be a little more mature in my writing. Is that just come
I
natural or do
think
you have to
no,
evolve?
no question. I think every songwriter, whether they start at 12 or 30 or 20, and if they write their entire lives, I think that they all mature, and we become better at our craft. We should. If not, we need to find another occupation. But no question, as I get older, I'll tell you what I do differently now. When I first started writing, I would write 5, 6, 7 days a week, and sometimes two or three different sessions a day. Now I write when I feel like writing. And that's why I said earlier, as I alluded to, when I'm up here and I don't write a whole lot, I'm excited about writing when I get home. And I might write for when I go out on the road. I might write every day while I'm on tour on the bus. I might write every day, and then I might skip a whole week of writing and not write. But I try to. I write now more like when I feel like writing, as opposed to feeling like I have to write a song. If that makes sense.
It does. I always ask this question to every songwriter. How do you know when it's finished?
How do I know what?
How do you know when that song is finished? No matter what it is. How do you know I'm done with it? I'm not going to go back to it 3 days from now and say, you know what? I got to change this lyric, or after it's a recording studio, no, I need to change it again. When do you just put the pen down and say, I'm done with it?
I will tell you this, most songwriters never are never done. They'll tell you that. They'll say, I'm never done. But what I do is, I'll tell you when I'm done with the song, when it's on the record, whether it's on my record or someone else's. At that point, you can't go back and change anything, and I'm not a guy that worries about that. I'm already focused on the next song. In fact, most of the time, when I go in the studio and record a song, or if someone else has recorded a song, it's gone. I'm already on the next project.
Is there ever been a song you look back on, maybe once it's recorded, it's like, oh, now I got a better lyric for it?
No, like I said, it's in another book. I'm already working on the new one. I don't do that now. Having said that, like I did a song called "Bonfire" that we wrote, and come Christmas time, we rewrote it for a Christmas theme.
Mhm.
I've done those kind of things, but no, not really. Now, what I will do as a singer, I've recorded songs, and finished it and everything's done. It's on the record. And then I go do it and I start doing it live and I realize that I'm singing it differently live than I did when I recorded it because I like what I'm doing better. But as far as the writing, and I'm not one of these writers, and I've been writing for a long time. I know some artist writers and some writers that it's like, oh, this is their baby. I'm like, you've never had a kid then. um, it's an occupation, it's a craft, and it is such a blessing, and I'm grateful to God for it. But it's just a song, and I know that just a song can impact people's lives. But I would like to think that it isn't the lyric and the music, it's a combination of a lot of things that make those songs affect other people. And a lot of that has to do with them. And I think as writers, we must, and as artists, we must recognize that our music is not just our story; it's other people's lives and even pieces of it. And that's what they attach themselves to. So I don't worry about the song after I'm done with it. If that answers your question
Oh, it
thoroughly.
does. It does. Well, when you get back into the States and start touring again, you feel in better shape now after spending months up in Alaska?
No question. No question. Being up here for me, I mean, I've had friends come up and spend 7 days and lose 20 pounds. I'm just telling you, it's that kind of physical activity up here.
What do you put them through that are losing 20 pounds?
A lot, like I said, a lot of it has to do with the cold during the winter, and we hustle. We're always busy. We're always doing stuff, whether it's a long hike, whether like the other day I snowshoed out because I couldn't ride the machine out because we have this stuff called overflow. So I had to snowshoe around. So I snowshoed about 4.5 miles out and 4.5 miles back. Uh, it's not like walking. It's not like going for a stroll.
I mean,
Um,
you have a cold now or?
no, no,
Oh,
no. I was messing with a fire last night outside. I, Oddly enough, I built a fire out there to dry out some stumps that I was making seats out of.
hmm.
That's the kind of stuff you're always doing something like that. So I got around the fire smoke a lot last night.
Wow. So, what I was gonna say, when you're doing these 4.5 mile these treks, do you have to pack a whole lot of gear with you, a lot of protein bars or waters
I
and
don't
all?
eat I don't eat protein bars. They're not good for you. I don't care what anybody says. And anybody listening, look at the stuff. I'll say shit that's inside a protein bar. There are very few protein bars that are really good for you. Um, I mean, I'm sure you know this, and you've heard people talk about like cancer lives on sugar. So that's why I try to minimize that. But to answer your question, do I take? I take fire starting devices because let's say I'm trekking and I'm in a place where I've got no service or nothing, and I'm 4 miles from the cabin, and the next closest place is another 4 miles, and I break my leg. I need to be able to build a fire. And I need to be able to get myself into a mobile position where I can attempt to get out, or at least get somewhere where I make communications. So I make sure that I have the things that I need to be able to do that, the minimal. Um, like I said, I'll go. It's easy for me to go 48 and by easy I mean if I had to, 48 to 72 hours with no food is not a big deal at all. It's not a big deal. I do a minimum of 18 hours a day, period. So it's not a big deal. If I was out there for 48 hours or 72 hours with no food, I'm going to be okay. My energy will be okay. My body lives off of the fat and what I have, so I'm not worried about that as much. And generally, between here and there, I can crawl 4 miles, so I know I can get to where I need to be.
Do you put on weight then when you get back?
I have to be real careful. That's a good question. I have to be real careful because, especially if my energy slows down. In fact, I'm leaving here in a week or less than a week to go on a cruise. So I'm going to have to be real careful on that cruise and not overdo it. It's a working cruise. We're doing shows. But I'll probably have to go to the gym and do some running on the treadmill there while I'm there, and not and be careful not to take advantage of all the food on those cruises.
Now I saw also that you just re-enlisted again in the army, in the reserves.
Yes, in the Army Reserves.
Congratulations. Hey, thank you for your service, by the way, on that. But what made you decide to do that? And did you have to do anything as far as physical requirements to do?
Oh yeah, I had to do the same thing everybody else does. I had to take a physical, a complete military physical, and did that. I had to pass the Army Combat Fitness Test, the ACFT, and I did that. And in fact, when I took the ACFT, I knew that there were going to be naysayers that thought that because I'm Craig Morgan, that I just get to go in there and do it. But so I was adamant about not just passing the ACFT, but I wanted to score really well, and I did. I did really well. I passed the physical. Didn't require any waivers for anything except my age because I was older than the required re-enlistment age. But they gave me the waiver, and they'll do the same thing for anyone. It ain't like they did Craig Morgan a favor. They'll
Mhm.
do the same thing for anyone in a profession that the military needs personnel in.
Well, with that, how with your military background, everything that you've done, what point did you decide that country music is where I'm really going to make my career?
I'm still questioning that. uh, excuse me. I don't know. I was in the Army for so long, and music. I will say this though, music has always been a part of my life. Even as a young kid in high school, I was writing songs. I thought I was. I was trying to write songs. My dad was a musician. I was born in Nashville. I grew up in and around that industry, so it was always a part of my life. But I'll be honest, it wasn't until 2008 when the Grand Ole Opry made me a member of the Grand Ole Opry that I realized that it would probably be a forever job if I wanted it to be.
Wow. No looking back since.
I've never looked back anyway. I will say this in the very beginning, from 2000 to 2008, I kept waiting for somebody to tell me that it's not going to work and go back in the Army. But every time I would think that, this ain't where I need to be, this isn't my place, this isn't where I belong, kind of, I always felt like an outsider, even though I was from Nashville. I was born there, grew up in and around, like I said, the business. I always felt like it just wasn't my place. Um, I'm the guy that spent half of my life in an occupation that if someone knew who I was, where I was, or what I was doing, then I wasn't doing my job properly in the Army. And then I went and got an occupation where if people didn't know who I was, where I was, or what I was doing, then I wasn't doing my job properly. So I was covering both ends of the spectrum of, notoriety as opposed to not being noticed. Um, it was a very difficult transit, and still to this day, my wife and I'll be walking through an airport or up here if I go into Lowe's and someone's staring, and I look at myself like is my zipper unzipped or whatever, and then you go, oh, that's right, I'm Craig Morgan.
With all everything that you did, was it more physically or mentally taxing or challenging to
The
accomplish
military.
military? Especially when you said
Um,
you've got to be discreet on what you're doing.
I think it's equal, and that's the greatest thing in my opinion about the military and the Army in particular. You challenge yourself or they challenge you physically, which pushes you to a point to where you mentally are challenged to overcome. It's called you got to have the mental fortitude to be able to overcome the physical aspects of what it is you're required to do. The long road marches, the runs, but these are not things that they do just for fun. They do it because in a combat environment, you will be required to do things and push yourself beyond your physical, what you think are your physical limits. The old term, train as you fight. So you do in training what you would do if you were going to be in combat. The only difference is we're not firing real bullets. I mean, they're flying around in real helicopters. We're rappelling out of real helicopters. We're jumping and parachuting out of real airplanes and landing on the ground in the same way that you would. The only difference is you're not being shot at. Uh, but in training situations, uh, they have lasers, they have all kinds of technologies that you feel as though you're being shot at. So when you say which is more challenging physically or mentally, I would tell you they're equally challenging, especially when you get into some of the special operations community. And the mental capacity there sometimes can overpower and be more challenging than even the physical.
Now, could that same mindset apply to, I guess, a new singer just coming into Nashville? I mean, the guy who
It's
comes in and plays in front of five people in a bar.
It should. It should. I've always thought that I want to have a program for new artists and put them through a bit of a artist boot camp. Where if the radio station, if you're supposed to be at the radio station for a morning on air interview at 6 a.m., you don't roll out of bed at 5:45 and show up at 6:30. I think it's disrespectful. Um, If you're supposed to be there at 6 and you're not there at 5:45, then you were late. Uh, that was something I learned in the military. If you're on time, you're late. Um, in my opinion, in this world and in our lives, there is no place for arrogance. Confidence is extremely important, but there is a difference between confidence and conceitedness. And in my opinion, there should be no conceitedness. And I think one of the ways you break that is by humility. If you can maintain a sense of humility and confidence, then you will be successful and achieve what it is you set out to, regardless of what it is.
Did you ever have a moment like that, or somebody just, I guess, theoretically slapped you into shape, or slapped your senses?
Only in the Army. And I took all of that and applied it, like I said, to everything that I've done moving forward.
One question I wanted to ask earlier, I forgot, was about Ironman training. Did you ever? What was that like?
It's a backwards planning schedule. Ironman's on this day. And there's, you can go online. I could tell you, I've created my own, and I have a son-in-law and a daughter. They're both Ironmen, and they kind of help with the training plan because they've done it so many times. My son-in-law qualified for the national Ironman in Hawaii, went and did that when he qualified for the national half Ironman. But you literally know that here's the date of the Ironman. You back up however many months and you start training that day and work your way up to that point. You don't, I will say this, even a triathlon, I learned this the hard way. My wife was running the rock and roll marathon series. And I said, I'm going to join you in Arizona. I'm going to run that half marathon with you. I didn't train. I didn't do nothing. I just showed up and I did it. And I killed it. I absolutely killed it. I may have averaged about a 7.5 or 8 minute mile for the 13 miles, but the next day I couldn't get off my bus. And that's what training for those things does. It prepares you so that after the fact, you're not so worn out that you can't, that you got to go to the hospital.
So what is your how do you recover now?
You know what? I try to not slow down enough that I don't require a lot of recovery. I will say out here, that's one of the things when I come in of the evening, I'm pretty worn out. But by the next morning, when I get up after 4 to 6 hours of sleep, I've recuperated enough that I can get right back after it. When the idea is to get to a point to where you no longer are breaking it down. You don't have to, you know what I mean? You don't have to break it down and build it up. You're maintaining a certain level.
So you never overdo it. So it's not like there's no overtraining. There's just enough training where and just gradually progress each time.
If you're talking about an Ironman, absolutely. But in life out here, I do sometimes overdo it. I sometimes come in and I can't hardly move because I moved. Yesterday I moved. I had to dig out these stumps, as I was alluding to earlier, and each stump probably weighed 160, 170 pounds. And when you pick them up and carry them 70 yards and you build a fire and you're melting the ice off of them, you're drying them out, and then you move them back over to another place. Like I said, it's like doing what do they call those gyms? I think they're funny. A lot of people love them. Uh,
Which one?
what are those gyms called? CrossFit. There you go.
CrossFit, yeah.
So I do CrossFit every day for real life.
I mean, it could be the sticks in your knee that are holding you up a little bit, but
Oh yeah, I mean, I've messed up. I broke my right knee so bad. I had a plateau fracture of the tibia. I've got plates and metal in there. I've torn rotator cuffs. I've beaten myself up, and there's pain. But like I said at the very beginning, and I believe this, and I try to teach it to everybody I know. You must be willing to accept that pain, or you will never ever get beyond the level that you're at. It's just that simple. And sometimes, the pain is telling you something. People would say, "Oh, you got my sister tried to tell me yesterday, you may have a dislocated rib or something." I'm like, I might, but I'm still getting up and going to work. I'm still going to go do what I do and get past this pain.
what's the closest you ever done to overdoing it in that sense?
Well, when I almost overdid it when I crashed into the lake and went in the water.
You weren't going back home, were you?
No, yeah, I hopped back on the machine and came back to the house. And like I said, got on dry clothes, warmed up, and went back to work. No, I don't know. There have been days out here where it was just so rough. One night we had 3 foot of snow overnight. I took the machine out and I got stuck 4 or 5 times. And when you spend, 30 minutes to an hour each time trying to get yourself dug out in sub-zero temperatures, it really strains you physically. You think you have nothing left. Uh, but then mentally, as I alluded to with the military, something I think they teach you, mentally you push yourself beyond that that moment, that limit at that moment, and then you create a new limit.
Last question I do have, and it alludes back to the songwriting evolution we talked about before. And it's just your new album you have out now. It's American Soundtrack.
Yes.
Now, I mean, all the songs, I'm looking at them now, Roots, God's Problems, Country, they all have a little theme to it. I mean, did you go into that album saying, I want to keep it all within this theme, this category, and not, like I said, throw in a beer and tractor type of a song to it?
I'm going to answer this 2 ways. First, my format, my platform, my life has always been God, family, country. Always. Those are the three most important things in my life. And I somehow always um, resort to those elements in my music. I wished I could tell you that I was smart enough to do it up front. I attribute it to God. He's blessed me, and I let Him have it. Um, and when it comes to the theme of an album, I don't do it. What I do is I try to write, sing, and record and produce great songs. And we do that when we're looking and writing for the next album. That's all we do. And then we find the ones that we think are the best. We put them together and go, hey, what's our theme here? What happened here? And it always comes together. I attribute it to God, not me, not my label, not my co-producer. Now, having said that, my producer and I and the label and management, everybody gets together and we collectively go, hey, look, there is a theme. And that's how we identify it. This is an American soundtrack. These are songs. I'm as proud of this as anything I've ever done. I think the writing on this, as you have talked about, I think my writing has come to a point to where I'm extremely proud, and I can tell up front that we've written something of great quality. Um, and every one of these songs feel that way, and they all allude to middle class America, the people that really build and make up this country. Regardless of where you stand politically, they're hard workers, they're smart, uh, God fearing, loving, caring people. And that's what this music is all about. And how the title track, American Soundtrack, is a song that talks about how all music has affected us and how we live our lives, sometimes by it.
Mhm. Last question. Everything you've done, what is more nerve-wracking? Would it be a military assignment? Would it be falling into a lake in Alaska? Or would it just be singing the national anthem in front of a NASCAR audience?
Number one most nerve-wracking thing that I do in my life. It is not out here. If I die out here, God bless me. But the most nerve-wracking thing that I do is singing the national anthem in uniform, because I do not want to let my military, my army, my fellow soldiers, I don't want to misrepresent them in any way. And I take great pride in that song and what it stands for and what it means. So I'm always an absolute nervous wreck when I do that song, because I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to be the guy on YouTube that everybody's talking about when that song happens. In fact, the only thing I want them to say is that, man, I'm proud to be an American after hearing that song.
How many times have you done it?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's kind of what I do now. When I went back into the Army, I went back in as a warrant officer with the Army band, one of the Army Reserve bands, actually out of Huntsville at Redstone Arsenal. So I'm a vocalist in the United States Army band, representing the Army, working in hand with Army recruiting in an attempt to encourage other people to experience the great opportunities that the Army offers. So I can't even tell you how many times I've done it.